welcome to Jack Crow Woodworking. So I had to take a little bit of a time out because I sprained my knee and wasn't able to get in here and do much of anything, which really was not the most fun thing in the world, but you know, you gotta let your body recuperate. So where we are as far as the bench that we're building, I have built the bottom of it. I'm still working on the frame. I noticed that the grooves that I had cut previously into the side pieces here. I don't know if you can see this, but we'll just go for it. So it's going to sit this way, and I'm going to have a piece of 1 inch, maybe 1.125 by 14. Basically just slide in here, and I'm hoping that the dado that I cut into this with with my brand new router plane, which I am just stoked about. The more I use hand tools, just the happier I am, because you know, I've said this before, but you have a much greater, or at least I have a much greater sense of control, because you're doing things slower, and because you don't have moving sharp objects flinging at, you know, 2, 4, 6,000 RPMs. You can get in there close and see the cut and see how it's doing. And to me, that just feels so much more natural. Yes, using powered tools is faster, and with the right experience and the right time and the right setup, it's equally as accurate, but it's not what I feel comfortable with. And this is my workshop, and this is my wood, and so I'll do it the way I want to. And that's something I really love about being in here. This is definitely my happy place, because that's exactly it. If I want to cut, you know, 1/2 inch out of that, I can. If I don't want to, I don't have to. And so I really am happy to be in the workshop again. I still have to take it easy with, you know, my movements and how much I pick up and all that sort of stuff, because I don't need to re-injure myself. But so slow and steady wins the race. So what I did was I had about 1/8 inch dado in there, and it was sloppy. I had cut it with a, you know, chisel, and it just, I wasn't happy with it, and plus too, I needed to drop in deeper. I'm very grateful that my mom and dad asked me, you know, well, what kind of tools do you need? And so I was given a very wonderful and happy early birthday present. So thank you, Mom and Dad, I appreciate it. The first Patreons of Jack Crow Woodworking. So basically what I'm doing right now is I know that I need to take another 1/8 inch off of this piece right here. And so what I did was I found, with this gauge, I found what I had, and then I took my ruler and I just said, okay, another 1/8 inch on that is going to be such and such, and so there I have it. So then I was able to take this and kind of get a ballpark of what I needed. So I was able to set my router plane, which really has just been just a pleasure. You know, you have to go through the usual setup of, you know, when you buy a new hand tool, of, you know, flattening the bottom and getting a good edge, because if you don't use sharp tools, you're just asking to get hurt. I mean, yeah, you can get away with it for a while, but you're asking to get hurt and you're making more work for yourself. So let's lock this thing down. Looks like it wants to rain outside. Okay, so what I did was, when I determined the maximum amount of depth that I wanted to go, I locked down the locking screw and then set my stop. And so no matter what, unless I'm going crazy on tightening it down, which I'm not going to, I don't have to worry about, okay, when do I stop? When do I stop? The thing that I've found is small cuts. You know, if you jump in there and try and dig all of it out at one time, you're just going to make a mess. So slow and steady, nice and easy. It's a lot like life. You know, if you just, I had a boss one time, he told me, we were trying to put a gear onto a motor, and it didn't want to go. It seemed like it could go, you know, with a little bit of nudging. But the thing is, if you have the right gear for the right shaft diameter, you won't have to do any nudging. So he came along. His name is David Hall, and he is one of the hardest people that I've ever had to work for. But I will never forget working for him, because after all the headache and me, you know, fighting him, trying to teach me stuff, because I was young and, well, you know, I was young. After all that, just one of the smartest men I've ever known, and it's just a real pleasure. So anyway, so he comes up to us, he sees what we're doing. We've got a dead blow hammer, and we've got this, I don't know, probably a 35 horsepower motor up on the bench, and we're sitting there just whacking this thing away, and it wouldn't go. So we'd pull it off, sand down the shaft a little bit, sand down the inside of the gear, and we'd go at it again. So he comes up on us, walks into the shop. What y'all doing? Obviously, you know, by this time we're hot and tired and frustrated and all this sort of stuff. And he asked us, he always would ask us, did you read the manual? Is that the right size gear? Is that the right size shaft? He taught me to think. He taught me to read a book. I mean, the people that wrote the tech manuals, they're the ones that put the thing together, so if anybody would know what to do and how to do it correctly, 9.6 times out of 10, it's going to be fine. You just have to have the humility to say, okay, maybe I'm not really sure about what I'm doing, and then take the initiative to actually read it. So, long story short, the lesson, one of the many lessons that he taught me was, if you're having to force something, then something's wrong. And I've probably said this in a different video, but that is a very good credo, mantra, I don't know what you'd call it, but it's a very good philosophy, there it is, on life, in relationships, in jobs, in trying to cut a certain piece of wood a certain way. If you are having to force something, if you're trying to get a job so bad and nothing's working, if you're trying to force something, something's wrong. Back up, take a breath, look at it and say, okay, maybe I should read the instruction manual. And no, that is not a reference to the Bible. Although I do not discredit anybody that has a system of beliefs and that makes them feel good. Anyway, let me get away from that. So anyway, back to the whole crux of all of it, of having sharp tools. If you've got a dull tool and you're having to force it to cut, just back up and sharpen it. And I hate to sound like a grumpy old man, but you know, these are things that, you know, even adults need to hear. You know, even I need to hear, you know, hey, take a break, take a step back, relax, you know. So anyway, so what I'm doing right now is, you know, I'm cutting and making minor adjustments. I went in too deep on that one, so I'm resetting. All right, and that's too shallow. So I'm just gonna let it drop down a little bit. Still not enough. It's okay. It's better not enough than too much, especially with wood, because unless you have magic powers to grow what you just cut out back, it's better to be too shallow than it is cut too deep. Anyway, so the way that I sprained my knee was, I was at work and I picked up something heavy, which is part of my very normal day-to-day, and I twisted my body, but I didn't, my foot was kind of set, and so when I twisted my body and my foot was planted, my knee, I felt a kind of a double pop on the inside of my knee, which I guess is the MCL, or I don't know, not a doctor, but I thought to myself, I was like, oh, this isn't gonna be good. And guess what? It was not. And so for the past, coming up on a month, I've been having to wear a knee brace and having to have my leg up and hadn't been able to do my job, but thankfully I work for a very good company that has found things for me to do so that I wasn't just sitting at home going stir crazy, and that, you know, I wasn't using up PTO and all that sort of stuff. So that's something to be grateful for. So after I finish this little bit right here, after I finish it up, I'm going to double check with my gauge to make sure that my stop on my iron hasn't shifted, and I've just been sitting here, you know, chatting away and digging a hole that I don't want to have to dig myself out of. And this is what I love about the router plane, is you just get that, I mean, it's just uniform. It's parallel to this, and it's uniform. And I makes me a happy clam. Alright, so I've still got fair ways to go. Now to double check myself, because I've already done this one. Okay, that's correct. So you can see how that's got rock in it, which means I still need to take out, that looks like another 1/8 of an inch. So we just keep on going. One of the good things about having been laid up, if you are, I'm trying to count my blessings, is the first week, there's only so much YouTube you can watch. And I do love watching my favorites. And I'm not going to name drop, but there's 4 right offhand that 4 or 5 that are just fantastic, and every time I watch them I learn something. But it gave me a chance to read, and also it gave me a chance when I guess I was about 2 weeks into the whole rigmarole. It gave me a chance to buy one of these because I needed it. I probably should be using it right now. To buy a stool and sit down and practice cutting my joints, because the only way you're going to get good at something is by practice. And plus too, it's just fun. Taking 2 pieces of wood that had nothing to do with each other and marry them with a nice tight seam. There's a strong sense of accomplishment. And yes, even though it's a simple half lap on 2 pieces of wood, when you take your time and you do it right, and that seam is just so thin, you step back and I did that. And it gives you confidence for your future woodworking endeavors. One thing you need to remember when routing out a dado with a router plane is you come in on this side first and go about halfway, and then come in on this side and do the same thing, and that way you're not blowing out the edges. Just a little tip. I've really kind of been debating on what kind of channel this should be, but I think what really feels most comfortable is just this, just being able to be in my happy place and to just have conversations. Or a conversation. Would you call this a soliloquy or a monologue? I'm not sure. Alright, so what I've come up against is I've bottomed out on the seam right here. So I'm going to make a little noise and drop this down, because what was happening is that there was no cut, and so the shavings weren't wanting to come off. I'll lower that. And see, you can sit here and see the distance between your brass stop and the housing of the router, and you can look at it and adjust it without having to, you know, go back and forth guessing. It doesn't mean it's not going to happen. You see how much easier that is? I'm not having to fight cutting a seam. I don't know what else to call it, but cutting a seam in there, because I let the chisel do it, and it frees the grain to come loose. Loosen my lock nut or bolt, whatever you want to call it. Drop down my iron, reset it. I like using this thing on a pivot. Maybe it's because of my body positioning at the moment, but that seems to be the best way right at the moment to attack what I'm doing. I feel like it's giving me more control to come at it in a pivot fashion than to just plow straight through. And that's something I think that we should all not be afraid of. You know, if doing something a certain way works for you and you get the results you want, why not? I'm going to keep working on this, and I will see you next time.